President Shettima represents President Tinubu at this year's Armed Forces Remembrance and Celebration Day.
President Tinubu champions global climate action at Abu Dhabi Summit.
To promote a green economy in Africa, we must focus on integrating sustainable practices in all sectors of our economy.
Ministers' agencies make case for increased funding in 2025 budget defense.
The Renewed Hope Agenda Housing Scheme and Cities Program is the current administration transformative developmental agenda aimed at addressing housing needs and social inequality.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today we shall focus on Nigeria-China relations.
Nigeria and China, two nations with shared history, but worlds apart. The partnership dates back to in the early 1970s, when Nigeria formally recognized the People's Republic of China. Who would have thought that one day they'd become such a very close ally?
You're right, Claire. You know, back then it was just like taking baby steps, you know, trade deals, diplomatic handshakes. Now, fast forward to today, and China is now Nigeria's biggest trading partner. It's just like they say in Nigeria, going from neighbors borrowing salt to food on business partnership, building highways and railways together.
Of course.
And so much more, actually, yes.
Of course, Jume, that's the African culture. And that's a great analogy indeed. And in 2005, they took it up a notch by signing a strategic partnership agreement focusing on energy, agriculture, technology, and so on and so forth. Now, they are into so many deals, but with all partnerships, of course, there will be gaps or challenges.
Of course, there's no perfect partnership, and it's not all rosy there. And there are concerns, excuse me, about that environmental impacts and trade imbalances. Some say Nigeria is handing China the bigger slice of the pie.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely. And critics argue that Nigeria is sending out raw materials and getting finished goods in return. Now, that's a trade-off that feels one-sided, but there's also hope for the future, isn't it, Julie?
Absolutely clear, you know, and if you can imagine Nigeria diversifying its export, attracting more investment and tapping into new opportunities like renewable energy and tech innovation. The potential is huge if both sides play their cards right. And you know, the Renewed Hope agenda is focused on diversifying Nigeria's economy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with, you know, renewed and strengthened bilateral relations between China and Nigeria, there is hope that we may, you know, strengthen the different areas of our needs. And of course, that's why today we are going to be preoccupied with, of course, this very complex relationship on our program, Good Morning Nigeria today. So we'll be asking the questions, what does it mean for Nigeria's growth, culture, and politics? And how can we ensure a win-win situation for both countries?
Yeah, and you know, you've got to stick with us as we unpack this with experts and stakeholders. We will also take into account Nigerian businesses navigating this evolving partnership. It's going to be a revealing conversation. You got to stay tuned to NTA Network Center, NTA Network Service for that. And I'm Jumai Yusuf, welcoming you to the Thursday edition of the program with my sister Claire.
Jumai, good to see you. Good morning and welcome. We're live on the network service of the NTA. As always, we will be starting off shortly with highlights of the morning news. But of course, Chukwudioku Lugbaja will be joining us much later to do the newspaper review. For now, I beg your pardon, Comfort Modu is smiling away, and I'm sure she has some comforting news for us.
Well, a whole lot with the Armed Forces Remembrance Day being held in a solemn display of national pride and reflection. Nigerian's Vice President Kashim Shettima represented President Tinubu at the National Arcade in Abuja, marking the 2025 Armed Forces celebration and Remembrance Day. The event, a tribute to the country's fallen heroes, reached its emotional climax with a wreath-laying ceremony, where top government officials paid their respects in a solemn file past.
And grant them the fortitude to stay strong and find solace in you.
Bless our country, Nigeria, and unite us together. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
Common good of all. Lord, do not mark their guilt. Bring them and all the departed into the light of your presence.
In a move to address concerns and ensure accountability, the Nigerian Air Force has dispatched a fact-finding committee to Zamfara State. This follows recent airstrikes targeting bandits in the region, which unfortunately caused collateral damage and civilian casualties. Governor Dauda Lawal of Zamfara State has commended the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, for his commitment to investigating the incidents and his concern for the affected victims. This praise came during a meeting with the NAF Fact-Finding Committee at the Government House in Zamfara State. And the NAF's proactive approach demonstrates its dedication to transparency and accountability by engaging with local authorities and investigating the circumstances surrounding the airstrikes. And the NAF aims to ensure that its operations are conducted in a responsible and respectful manner.
There's a team from Abuja that was sent by the Chief of Air Staff to come and commiserate with the good people of Zamfara State. That shows a sign of good leadership. Even though we know it was not intentional, it was in the process of doing their job.
Elsewhere, President Bola Tinubu took the global stage at the 2025 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, advocating a united front against climate change. Addressing a high-level session, the Nigerian leader emphasized the need for a more purposeful global commitment and partnership to build a sustainable future for generations to come. Held in the capital of the United Arab Emirates, the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week is a premier global platform that brings together world leaders, experts, and stakeholders to promote sustainability and also foster collaborations. President Tinubu's participation emphasizes Nigerians' commitment to addressing the pressing challenges of climate change and sustainability.
Including deforestation, desertification, coastal erosion, flooding, pollution, and many other negative impacts of climate change. To promote a green economy in Africa, we must focus on integrating sustainable practices in all sectors of our economy.
At the National Assembly, ministers and top government officials are appearing before the lawmakers to defend their 2025 budget proposals. A key focus of these budget defense sessions has been addressing the pressing issues of providing shelter to millions of Nigerians and mitigating the country's escalating humanitarian crisis. During these engagements, ministers, chief executives of agencies and committees of the National Assembly have been discussing strategies to tackle these challenges in the 2025 fiscal year. And the National Assembly has been emphasizing the need for transparency, accountability in the budgeting process, with some committees even issuing deadlines for revenue-generating agencies to defend their budgets.
And staff entitlement.
Your procurements should be centrally done, not individual services.
Also, Minister of Information and National Orientation appeared before the House Committee to defend the ministry's 2025 budget proposals, in line with the legislative arm's responsibility to scrutinize annual budgets proposed by the executive as part of its oversight functions. The minister's appearance at the National Assembly was accompanied by chief executives of various agencies under the Information Ministry, and the committee's review of the budget proposals include adjusting figures to align with national interest and prioritize the welfare of citizens. This budget defense session is a critical step in ensuring that the ministry's allocations are transparent, accountable, and aligned with the country's development goals. By engaging with lawmakers, the minister aimed to provide insight into the ministry's plans and justify its budget requests for the upcoming fiscal year.
41,000 and the amount remitted to government is 57,941,900. I want to say that we had 100% remittance to government from the internal generated revenue. The revenue, of course, you can see is very low. That is why we want further investment to go into that so that we can generate more revenue, and in turn some of the activities of the ministry and some of its agencies will become largely self-reliant.
Deputy Chief Whip of the House of Representatives, Adewumi Oriyomi Onanuga, is dead. Spokesman of the House, Akin Rotimi, announced her death in a statement, saying the lawmaker passed away on the 15th of January 2025. After a brief illness, she represented Ikene Shagamu, Remo North Federal Constituency of Ogun State in the Green Chamber. The late Onanuga was first elected to the House in 2019 on the platform of the All Progressives Congress. During that tenure, she served as chairperson of the House Committee on Women Affairs and Social Development in the 9th Assembly after her re-election in 2023. She was appointed Deputy Chief Whip of the 10th Assembly, a position she held until her death. Born on December 2nd, 1965, the late lawmaker is described as a dedicated public servant and passionate advocate for her constituents. She becomes the 5th lawmaker to pass away in the tenure of the 10th House of Representatives. That's the news, but Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly after the break with Claire and Jimmy.
I am Oluremi Tinubu, the global and national Stop TB champion. Many people have asked why I've chosen to champion the fight against a disease like tuberculosis. My reason stems from a deep personal experience. I once had a friend who unfortunately fell ill and concealed the nature of his sickness until it was too late. Eventually, after he passed, we discovered he had tuberculosis. Sadly, due to the stigma and discrimination surrounding the disease, he would not speak up or seek for help. His death was a painful reminder that we could have intervened and saved a life if only we had known earlier. Tuberculosis is an airborne disease that primarily affects the lungs, but can also impact other parts of the body. Being airborne means anyone, regardless of their social economic status, can contract it. In Nigeria, 1 person dies of TB-related illness every 7 minutes, amounting to 206 deaths every day. Globally, 1 person succumbs to TB every 25 seconds, which is a staggering 3,456 lives lost daily. These deaths are entirely preventable because TB is curable if detected and treated early. If you or someone you know has been coughing for 2 weeks or more, coughing up blood, experiencing night sweats, or losing weight drastically, it might be TB. Please visit the nearest government hospital or primary healthcare center for proper diagnosis and treatment. TB treatment is free in all government
and some private health facilities. Let us also remember not to stigmatize or discriminate against TB patients or those who have been treated for TB. Individuals who have been cured of TB cannot infect others. I call on all stakeholders, especially the private sector, to join us in the fight to end TB in Nigeria. Together, we can make a difference. Remember, TB anywhere is TB everywhere. End TB by 2030. Yes, we can.
The new Happic sachets. It has a thick formula, so all you need is just one sachet for your toilet bowl. It gives 10 times better cleaning and big savings too.
Wow, Helen!
Sparkling clean toilet with Happic sachet.
Good morning.
Good morning. Why is your sun shining like this?
Can't you see that Harmattan season is here? We need to protect our children from this dry weather.
What about the invisible germs?
Invisible germs?
During Harmattan, it's not enough to only protect your skin. You also need protection from these invisible germs. To protect our families, we use Dettol.
Harmattan season brings a lot of germs, but Dettol with Germ Defense gives protection from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Hey Nigeria, ready to breathe cleaner air and save money? Let's talk about gas. Drive with CNG, the smart, cost-effective choice. Fill up for less and travel further. Save money, save the planet. Switch to LPG for cooking. It's cleaner, healthier, and better for environment. Say goodbye to smoke and eye problems. Do you know Nigeria is a gas nation ranked 9th globally with over 209 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve? Gas isn't just for cooking and driving. It powers industries too. Cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient. And the best part, conversion centers are popping up everywhere. It's never been easier to switch to gas. Join the cleaner energy revolution. Choose LPG for cooking and CNG for your vehicles. Clean energy for brighter future. This message is brought to you by the Office of the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, supported by the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA.
We're live in the open market for Happic 10X Challenge. My people, today I will show you how the power of new Happic 10X gives your toilet a better cleaning than bleach.
Than bleach?
Yes, so.
Impossible.
Toilets have stains which bleach cannot clean effectively. But Happic is thicker and sticks better, which gives 10X better cleaning versus bleach and kills germs.
Oh, wow.
You can now see that Happic is better than bleach.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
Yeah, we continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country that, that God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. It's now time for newspaper review.
And Chukwudi Baja is right here with us for the newspaper review. Chukwudi, good morning.
Hello, Claire. Good morning. How are you doing today? Juma, good morning.
Kwana. Good morning. It's good to see you, Chooks.
Same here.
Yeah, we have some papers this morning. Let me begin with the Leadership newspaper. And from the Leadership newspaper, above the masthead, we have Why I Most Cherish Leadership Award. That's coming from the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Umo Eno. And below the masthead, court orders seizure of GHL's crude cargo over alleged First Bank debt. Find details on page 7. At the side piece of the headlines in the Leadership newspaper, USSD quotes, NCC approves 9 banks disconnection. Find the details on page 36. Biden orders hail Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Details on page 7. 7 farmers killed in Niger crash. Find details on page 6. Inflation rises to 34.80% ahead of rebasing. Details on page 35. And the headlines in the Leadership newspaper. Tinubu to armed forces, your sacrifices won't be in vain. With riders, Shatima, Akpabio, Abbas, others lay wreath. Governor's tax military on national security. Chief of Army Staff reaffirms commitment to troops' welfare. And 67 CSOs seek end to Amnesty International harassment. You find details on page 17. Let me quickly go to the Blueprint newspaper, and above the masthead of the Blueprint newspaper, rising depot costs signal imminent petrol price hike. Experts warn. Find details on page 28. Below the masthead, news, kingmakers to Makinde, stop campaign of calumny over Alafi. Find the details on page 5. First Bank debunks misleading reports, reassures of gold standards. Details on page 27. CHAN 2024, Nigeria to tackle Senegal, Congo, Sudan in group stage. Find details on page 40. And at the side piece of the picture story, NNPCL, only company that publishes 100% statement for accounts. That's coming from the CEO of Kyari, of NNPCL. Kyari remits 10 trillion naira into Federation account in September 2024. And CPPE to NAS, your obsession with revenue targets will hurt investors, increase poverty. With riders, urges CBN to pause on policy tightening measures, and inflation, like I said, hits 34.80%. That's coming from the NBS. And military bans drone operation in Northeast, warns against violation. Legions loud Tinubu on welfare and donates 150 million naira to widows. At the bottom plate of the Blueprint newspaper, NAS commends FIRS for hitting 21.6 trillion naira revenue in 2024. Half a trillion naira needed to fix decaying runways. That's coming from FAN. And reps assure of increased budgetary allocation for Information Ministry. Find details on page 7. That's good news, Claire.
Yes, absolutely, Jume. Okay, let's quickly take a look at Vanguard. And Vanguard has a lead story on why Boko Haram bandits are thriving. And the lead story says, as generals, commanders allege NGOs, others aiding terrorists. Details of that on page 14. And the picture story, of course, you see the Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru. Of course, the lady there is CJN of Nigeria. And you have the Deputy Speaker also standing there, the President of the Senate. On the other side, of course, you have all the military, the leadership of the Nigerian military, all there, of course, during the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day. Other stories trending, I think Jume has taken most of them, but let's see a little above the nameplate. Inflation rises to 34.8%. The festive period drives up demand. And Israel, Hamas reached Gaza ceasefire hostage release deal. 26. That's story on page 26, and that's the good news coming out of the foreign scene. Chukwudi.
Thank you, Claire. Quickly, before we go local, characteristically, the Hamas-Israel ceasefire is recommended. The carnage, there are words you don't throw down on morning television, but we have to say the way it is. What has been happening to, particularly the civilian population in Gaza, is simply unacceptable. So the first impression you have is that the bloodletting is going to stop.
Yes, going to stop. But even while the ceasefire was being announced yesterday, there was an attack. There was an attack. I think
it takes effect from Sunday.
From Sunday,
it takes effect from Sunday. I would have loved it to take effect as soon as they submitted as Hamas submitted their acceptance to the Qatari authorities.
Yes.
You know, Israel has also hinted. It's just that in the case of Israel, they would return to the cabinet for approval. That's how they run their show.
I hear that northern Gazans are already returning to.
But they are asking them, please exercise a little restraint.
Yes, restraint.
But you can understand the yearning to return home. And what home are they really returning to? It's all been flattened.
As far as they are concerned, it is the land that matters.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, they will rebuild.
Your ancestral home is your ancestral home.
They will rebuild.
But it's such a pitiable scenario.
That reminds me of this song. I can't remember the name of the artist now. This is the land of my home.
Oh, okay.
I say, this is the land of my home.
That's Eric Donaldson.
Eric Donaldson, yeah.
Old school is the best school, you know. I dance to that in my boogie shoes and, you know, my 6 inches.
Yes.
You know.
So
anyhow,
it's a land of their birth.
Yes.
You know, so that's the attraction. That's the lure, you know, for people to go back. I mean, there's this feeling. But one concern that, you know, is ongoing now, that that is being talked about, is whether or not that the second phase, because it's usually during the second phase that truths like this, you know, collapse.
Yes.
So there's also this apprehension about, you know, the second phase of the day, which is very critical.
Israel's insistence that he's going to have a buffer zone is you know, throwing his spanner in the works to some people. Then their presence on the Philadelphia corridor, you know, is also another area that is likely to throw up issues. But the most important thing is that they have said enough of the shooting, you know, and all that.
And I know under a Trump presidency, there will be more stability.
Actually, Trump virtually delivered threats to Hamas and Netanyahu himself. Trump does not like crisis. To forget the ones that could be naturally generated within his cabinet because of him. You know,
forget
it's okay.
Nigeria meets OPEC.
I'm really happy for Gaza.
Nigeria meets OPEC quota as output rises 6.3% to 1,507 million barrels per day.
Yes,
remember, 1.5. Remember our target, our benchmark.
Yeah, our benchmark is our own matter. What OPEC has given to you to produce has to do. I hope I'm correct. Please, experts should smooth things out. The OPEC 1 has to do with international whatever.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Regulation, yes.
Because given the Dangote refinery coming on stream, NNPCL has started again, definitely we're going to need to supply crude at many points, as it were. The most important thing is that we are upping the game in terms of what hydrocarbons we're able to pull from the bowels of the earth. We must have further capability. And I want to say that I like what has been happening during this administration. It seems that many things are coming on stream gradually hopefully by 2026, we'll begin to see the gains of what is going on at the moment.
We have to be patient still.
Yes. Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Yes. I was saying, let us not make it a ritual. Let something really magnanimous and quite, something that recognizes the effort of these people, some kind of award, maybe to widows and all that. Maybe something like that is in place. I just want us to have a way of marking the fact that standing or falling, Nigerian soldiers are a great, asset to this country.
Briefly before we go, before we go, reps assure of increased budgetary allocation for information ministry.
I am chairman of a media and publicity committee, and or somewhere, and when they say that we can do it cost-free, social media, blah blah blah, some people undermine information.
Yes.
Information is at the root of everything. Exactly. I was telling them there, for instance, that without the media and publicity committee, you'll be winking in the dark. Nobody will know what you're doing. Yes. So information should never, ever one day be dropped below the clout it should have. It should be one of the ministries pulling after security in this country today, education, agriculture. I don't want to think of any other ministry but information in terms of the budgetary allocation.
Especially
we have to think like that, please, so that they would also acquiesce, accept whatever we're presenting to them.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to say that, especially now that even NOA needs a lot of funding, to do its job. And the job that the NOA has to do now is very critical.
It is.
That's why I say we must give clout, necessary clout, to the assignment so that people would actually understand and accept that it is a big assignment we are. It depends on how we project the job of the NOA. It is a most important assignment.
Yes.
It's a most important role.
Well, I'm glad that the reps, are looking into it. Okay, so I got to let you go on that note. Thank you so much for coming this morning. It's a pleasure having you as always. We'll take a break. When we return, our conversation on Nigeria-China relations will begin. Don't go away.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we are more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
I think Amaka should just move out of the house. Yes.
No. Standing out of the house is not the right
thing to do.
Oh, there you go again with your sentimental family stuff.
Baby, if our aim is to stop this affair, it is best achieved under our roof.
You do something terrible and you'll be acting innocent.
What are you going on about?
Don't ask me that question again. You couldn't even control yourself in the presence of our visitors.
What are you accusing me of, woman?
My son, I don't know how serious you are with my daughter, but there's something that needs to be done urgently before you move any further.
Anything, I mean, just anything, just say it. I'm ready to do anything.
There is a spell that needs to be removed.
Spell.
Family forever. The story of our lives.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
Why do we have to arrange all the goodies into a tower? We should all take what we want, as we want, and when we want.
From Pets, it's important to secure the goodies and protect them for everyone. We want to make sure there's enough for everyone, even on a rainy day.
I don't see the point.
Oh no! Our tower! No! From Pets!
Oh, sorry.
This is a perfect example of how one poor choice can bring down something so great.
And our one small good action can make a big difference.
Remember, everyone, let's focus on making the right choices and doing small acts of goodness. Together, we can build something even more magnificent for everyone and ensure that it lasts.
This is still Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA, and to begin our conversation on Nigeria-China relations, here is a background report put together by our correspondent Ibrahim Danhamidu.
Nigeria and China have a long-standing relationship that spans over 5 decades, with diplomatic ties formally established in 1971. This partnership has grown significantly, with China becoming one of Nigeria's largest trading partners. The foundation of China's strategic interest in Nigeria is its robust commercial and investment footprint, particularly in the thriving bilateral trading relationship. Nigeria's strategic importance to China lays in its position as an export destination, a source of oil outside the Middle East, and a home to a growing consumer population. This has led to significant Chinese investments in Nigeria's infrastructure, energy, and agriculture sectors. However, the relationship is not without its challenges. Nigeria has expressed concerns about the imbalance in trade between the two nations, with Nigeria's imports from China far exceeding its exports. Additionally, there are concerns about the environmental and social impact of Chinese investments in Nigeria. Notably, Nigeria-China relations have also yielded significant security benefits, particularly in the provision of state-of-the-art military combat hardware and software equipment. China has supported Nigeria's efforts to combat terrorism, including Boko Haram, through intelligence sharing, training, and equipment provision. This cooperation has enhanced Nigeria's security capabilities, enabling the country to better address its security challenges. Experts in foreign affairs will discuss the intricacies of the Nigeria-China relationship, exploring the opportunities and challenges presented by this strategic partnership, and what it means for Nigeria's economic development, security, and global standing. What does this growing relationship mean for Nigeria's economic development? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will answer the question.
All right, let's get into action, and we'll begin with our introductions. We have Professor Sherif Gali Ibrahim. He's Head of Department, Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja, and of course, Director, Center for Contemporary China-Africa Research in Nigeria. Welcome to our studio, and compliment of the season.
Thank you for having me, Claire.
Yes. We also have with us Uechi Zhao, Humanities Chair Professor at Tsinghua University, China, Harare Forum for Africa, and she's right here with us. I hope I got your name correct. Uechi Zhao.
Uechi Zhao, yes. Thank you. Very glad.
You're welcome.
Happy to be here.
All right, then.
It's a pleasure.
And also, okay, that's Jume.
And
okay.
also joining us here in the studio is Charles Onanioju. He's Director, Center for China Studies, member of the International Advisory Committee of the Beijing-based China-Africa Institute, and member of the editorial board of China Theoretical Journal. CSEL Science, published by the Chinese Academy of Social Science, and author of 4 books on China, China-Nigeria, and China-Africa relations. Wow.
Thank you.
It's good to have you join us.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
And we also have joining us via Zoom from Switzerland is Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Deputy Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations. Good morning. Compliments of the season. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you. Good morning, Nigeria, and good morning, fellow panelists. Happy New Year to all of you.
We wish you the same, Ambassador. I'm tempted to start with you, Ambassador, so that we can leverage the connectivity before we lose your connection. Nigeria, China, have maintained a very cordial relationship, and as we noted at the beginning of our conversation, it's a relationship that dates back to the early 1970s. That's more than half a century, and even still waxing stronger. Recently, during the visit of the Chinese, minister, our own minister, alluded to the fact that the relationship has been very smooth, and he emphasized without dispute. Can you make this relatable to every Nigerian? What this means in real terms.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Brazak, and also my sister, for having me on this program. Now, the basis of China-Nigeria cooperation or relationship, and also China-Africa relationship, was established in the 1950s and 60s, actually, when Premier Zhou Enlai, or late Premier Zhou Enlai, enunciated the 5 principles of coexistence, which he carried to Bandung Conference in 1955, and it became the kernel of the founding of the non-aligned movement and the posture of China and developing countries towards each other at that time. So one of the the core principles of the principle of of peaceful coexistence is non-interference in the internal affairs of each other. And China has been observing this principle religiously, meticulously. And that is the basis of the absence of friction between China and many countries in the world, particularly African countries. They do not dictate to us, they do not involve themselves in affairs, they do not give us conditions in terms of political behavior on our parts to fulfill before they give us aid or assistance. So this mutual respect became the foundation or the pillar of relationship between us. Now, in regards to the visit of Councillor Wang Yi, the Foreign Minister of China recently to Nigeria and other African countries, it is in pursuit of already established objectives that have been agreed to by the leaders of Nigeria and China. In 2016, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, former president, visited China, and bilateral cooperation agreements were signed. And also subsequently he visited again, and since then, these relationships have been established at the highest level between the two countries. So what the foreign ministers are doing are actually, to translate the high-level agreements between President Xi Jinping and President Buhari, and now His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in terms of the overall architecture of the China-Africa and the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation that resulted in elevation of relationship between China and African countries to a special strategic relationship. And that is very important. And lastly, on this item, our own foreign minister, His Excellency Ambassador Yusuf Metama-Tuggar, visited China, I think in June or July last year, and met with his counterpart, Councillor Wang Yi. And a special mechanism was established between Nigeria and China that will oversee the implementation of the high-level agreements reached between the leaders of the two countries within the framework of Belt and Road Initiative, within the framework of the FOCAC initiative, and the larger agreements that were reached between Africa and China at the level of the China-Africa Summit. So we have existing frameworks that guide our relationship. Now this relationship have translated into opening up of Chinese market for exports from African countries, which I think the Manufacturers Association, the Chambers of Commerce, the Export Promotion Council, and others should take advantage of to penetrate the Chinese market, which is really virtually limitless in its absorption of foreign imports. Secondly, the expansion of infrastructure development programs in Nigeria by China is a very critical aspect of the development of the Nigerian economy and the promotion of the growth and industrialization of our country. So I think, the Renew Hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should focus on the translation of the FOCAC outcome and other related activities like the Belt and Road towards the scaling up of infrastructure development in Africa, in Nigeria, and industrialization of our country, and of course in achieving food security and promoting export.
Ambassador Sarki, I'm still going to stay with you. I have a question for you, and talking about Nigeria-China relations, Africa-China relations, there seemed to be a shift. Yesterday I was watching the Secretary of State for Trump administration at his confirmation, and he said a lot of things about China relations with the rest of the world, and saying that China is getting a leeway into countries and taking more than they are giving to those countries. What do you make of his statement on China relations with the Africa, and what does it underscore there?
Well, I think, we shouldn't be unduly worried or concerned about the perception of other countries in terms of our relationship with China. We are a sovereign, independent country, and our decisions are based on clear, level-headed assessment of our interest in terms of the security of our country, in terms of the development of our country, in terms of the dignity of our country, in terms of the promotion of the welfare and well-being of the Nigerian citizens. So our governments act in their independent and sovereign capacity to decide whom we will engage with on the global scene. The Americans pursue China within the larger geopolitical rivalry that have been unfolding in the last 20 years or so between the two countries, America and China, which doesn't really concern us. This is their own affair. But our own interest is to secure a strategic position and relationship with any country, including the United States, in terms of advancing the objectives of the Tinubu administration as of today. Secondly, this is not a new phenomenon. You remember when Secretary of State Tillerson visited Africa. Before he came, I think he delivered a speech either in Harvard University or one of the universities in America, whereby he contextualized US relations with Africa on the basis of rivalry with China and Russia. And also, the former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, also contextualized relationship with China and Russia on the basis of geopolitical brinkmanship or rivalry in Africa. So this is, I think, part of the American establishment to appease their own constituency in terms of justifying the sanctions and restrictions they're imposing on China, on TikTok, on Huawei, on the G5 technology, and many other things. So I think, my sister, we shouldn't be unduly worried about what they think in Washington. We should worry about what we think in Abuja and the rest of Africa. What is the best, options for us?
Thank you. I still think that we should maybe not worry, but we should also keep our ears and eyes to the ground as to how whatever decision that Trump may take in terms of trade and tariff imposition, how it might impact our relationship with China, but of course it might not be directly, it might be indirectly, and how we can leverage whatever impact that might come to our own to mutual advantage. But let me keep at that. We'll come to that much later. Let's look at 2024 because 2024 marked a very significant period in the life of this administration. President Tinubu made a number of trips to China, and one of those, we all know, the FOCAC summit. MOUs were signed. I'm coming to you, Professor Gali. MOUs were signed, I think 4 in number. Recently, again, we're told that those 4 MOUs were at various stages of implementation. Nigerians will want to know, review the impact of, our dealings in 2024 with China, specifically in regards with the MOUs that we signed with them.
All right, thank you, Clara. You see, these 2 independent giants, China and Nigeria, have been coupling together. And having that particular political and bilateral chemistry right from time, 1970s. You see, before you come into this particular MOUs, that is the memoranda signed between China and Nigeria, why is China important to Nigeria, and why is Nigeria important to China, and why is even China in Africa? You come to understand that Nigeria is so important. Why is it? Because Nigeria is the largest population in Africa. And when you talk of population, you are talking of market. Then apart from this, Nigeria also is strategic in terms of resources, both human and natural. Then this part, China respects Africa, China respects Nigeria. It does not impose, its culture or its policies, on Nigeria. And it allows that particular leverage, that particular process to actually flow without imposition, without really pushing Nigeria or any of African countries to actually accept what China demands. Now, coming down to the memoranda sign, I see China as a political and economic messiah for Nigeria and African countries, if you may. Why? Because hundreds of years, of Nigeria and China relations with other entities has not actually yielded developmental, monument that we can actually glaringly see, and Nigeria and Africa become proud of. But with this particular establishment, with the visit of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to the last FOCAC Summit held in Beijing in September 2024. Those 4 areas included one, which is the promotion of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is connectivity. Belt and Road Initiative is a policy in Asia which will actually connect people, nations, and states economically, socially, culturally, politically, to allow the spirit of doing business and harmonious coexistence among the people. So we have the economic belt, we also have the maritime Silk Road. So this come together, Nigeria becoming a member of this, it means it is actually conforming with the just concluded FOCAC Summit, which is jointly advancing modernization. There is no way you modernize without infrastructure. And the Belt and Road Initiative is one major area of infrastructure construction, not only in Nigeria, not only in Africa, but all over the world. Advanced societies have come to embrace infrastructure-driven development, which the Belt and Road Initiative has promised to actually deliver, not only to Nigeria and to Africa. So this memorandum signed, it means that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is taking Nigeria to the next level. Next level in the sense that what Nigeria has not been able to have, what Nigeria has not been able to develop. In this particular new era, Nigeria is going to benefit from this particular modernization process, which China and Africa are jointly going to actually deliver. And this is key to our national development, because no entity can boost up development without infrastructure. Then secondly, the need for energy sustainability, which we want clean, nuclear, that is the peaceful application or usage of nuclear energy. You can see that there is no entity, there is no economy that can actually sustain itself without sustainable and invariable supply of power. So in Africa, you discover that it's only South Africa that makes use of nuclear energy. So if Nigeria should follow suit, it makes Nigeria second country on the continent to actually make use of nuclear energy. So this is so significant in this new era in Nigeria or in China-Nigeria bilateral ties, bilateral relationship. Then apart from this human development, human resource development, which will be in tandem with the Global Development Initiative, there is no way development should take place without having human resource development. Infrastructure is essential for the continuity and sustainability of any form of developmental project. So, but that will translate or should translate into human resource development. And when you develop, you develop your human resources, you are by extension developing the entire country, because the human capacity building will now translate into practical development of that particular entity, because it is the human being, the people, who will actually have that particular technical skill and inertia, know-how to develop their entity. So this will actually put into the modernization process, the economic autarky and advancement, as well as bring political stability and sanitize the political environment. Then this is the part, the issue of media collaboration and partnership. You can see China Media Group, NTA, coming together. Why? Because the media is an essential part of every society, because it delivers, it entertains, it educates. So people become learned, educated through the media. So that is why media cooperation, that particular mutual learning between civilization. How does China operate in terms of media and communication? How Nigeria does that? Let's come together and learn. Share experiences. Where is the gap or lacuna? Let it be breached up. So these are some of the fundamental issues that encapsulated going the trip of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to Beijing to participate at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the Beijing Summit of 2024. And you can see these are all for Nigeria's modernization. These are all for Nigeria's developmental project, which we never had before. And that is why I say why China is in Africa is to sincerely and honestly aid in the development of Africa. And why is the United States of America afraid? Why are other entities afraid? It's because they knew that they had faced a sheer and a complete fiasco. They failed to aid Africa, but rather exploited Africa negatively in order to, make sure that Africa did not rise to compete with them. But China has learned that particular mistake committed by other entities, and that is why it is completely revolutionizing, reforming the way and manner nations and states engage on the world stage. China is sincerely and honestly aiding and even financing Africa's development and modernization. If you look at the China-Africa Leadership Dialogue, which was held in Johannesburg, China is even trying to promote Africa's integration. Integration in the sense that sub-regional integration, looking at ECOWAS, looking at SADC, looking at ECAS, looking at COMESA, looking at IGAD, that is Intergovernmental Authority on Development. China is all trying to promote all this particular integration so that Africa should be able to harness its potentials, aid each and every African entity to actually produce what it has, what is actually blessed in terms of natural resources. China will aid you to actually tap from those particular resources, even help you to take to China and sell. China is ready to buy from you. It's just because that particular trade deficit is not that China doesn't want you to go higher. No, it's you, the magnitude at which you produce, the level of your production, processing, and industrialization, that will actually determine the quantum of resources or finished good that you'll be able to sell. And China is promoting you, wanting you to produce more, bring more to the market. China is 1.4 billion. China's market alone suffices China's market, even though we need each other, but it is promoting us to actually come. And all this particular agenda, you think of United Nations Agenda 2030, dealing with the sustainable development, which the Millennium Development Goal fell, now replaced by sustainable development, your Africa Union Agenda 2063, and China-Africa, cooperation, Vision 2035. Why is China there? Is to follow up. If the United Nations agenda for sustainable development fails, if even the African Union agenda for the Africa we want, 2063, all these particular processes, China is confident that the China-Africa Cooperation Vision 2035 will serve as a beacon of hope in order to monitor the practicability, the operationability of all these particular agreements signed, and to champion development in this particular China-Africa cooperation that is hopeful and promising for this particular two giants.
Indeed, promising for these particular two giants, and I like the fact that you mentioned that China is not trying to impose their culture or anything on any nation, but in the other way too, they are also learning our culture, learning our language, learning how we dress, learning how everything, so that they can be able to, absorb themselves into the system. I like the fact that you brought the BRI up, because looking at the BRI, it's reshaping global trade routes and economic, flow. The opportunities are immense, job creation and all that. But still, people say, experts also say that there is a lot of challenges there that needs to be looked into. Let's bring in Mr. Charles Onyaneju into this conversation. What is your opinion on the BRI and the challenges that might come from that? We know we have a lot of bilateral agreements with China and all that, but Nigerians are also being skeptical about the fact that the debt burden is getting higher, and the BRI is now here to stabilize it by creating job opportunity, export, and reshaping the trade route between Africa and China and also Nigeria. So let's have your opinion on that.
Well, the Belt and Road Initiative is essentially a framework of global connectivity. It leverages on the Asian Silk Road, which was a trade route, also a route of friendship, a route of cultural and civilizational dialogue, and a route of engagement. So it is 2,000-year-old, and is being re-established in the contemporary times to engage issues of human aspiration, building bridges in literal sense and metaphorical sense, building bridges of connectivity in terms of cultural exchange, mutual learning, and but also it contains tangibles. It's a broad framework of international engagement. It's driven by the best metaphor to describe it is a symphony, is an orchestra in which you have many voices, different voices. The beauty of the BRI is an open framework. Countries can engage from areas they consider of priority to areas they can align to their national goals. It's not a one-fit thing. It's not something that fits all. It's broad. And the spirit and philosophy is extensive consultation. Nothing is imposed. Mutual, extensive consultation, mutual contribution, and then, of course, benefits to all. So it is a product of extensive consultation. Countries can leverage. Nigeria has been participating in the BRI. In fact, Nigeria became a formal member, a partnership member in 2018. When President Buhari visited China at the 3rd summit of the heads of state of FOCAC. And since then, BRI has delivered tangible. If you remember, we got our first ever deep seaport, built in a record time of 3 years, the Lekki Deep Seaport, which has transformed us into a hub. That is a very important outcome of the BRI engagement. Of course, road connectivity, because BRI engagement also connectivity within countries and across countries. Like you said, generating trade routes, because like it is said, if you want to get rich, build roads. Roads has opened connectivity, highways. Africa has got its first electrified highway. Djibouti connecting to Ethiopia, Ethiopian industrial heartland to Djibouti, cutting travel times from 9 days to 3 days, And so BRI is a framework of international cooperation that offers premium engagement for countries who can leverage their own ability and leverage the partnership it offers to generate particular things relating to their national priority. That is the beauty of it. It's not dictated from Beijing. It's a framework you can leverage. You can engage. You can decide which aspect of BRI engages your national priority. And you build capacity in that respect. And before we go further, I'd like to state clearly the critical challenge of China-African cooperation, or if you like, Nigeria and China relationship, is what I call strategic resilience. Do we build sufficient resilience in terms of institutional clarity? Do we have the institutional capacity to engage the outcomes of this cooperation and domesticate its benefits and align it to our national priorities? Because if our Chinese partners are ready, because if we talk so much about what is on offer, but the question, do we have the capacity? Have we built the relevant national capacity? In this case, institutional resilience, institutional clarity, and institutional credibility, efficiency, and competence. This must be the rule if we must leverage the engagement with China, and especially that flagship of international cooperation, BRI. If we must leverage it, we must build capacity. And capacity in this sense, I must stress, has to do with institutional efficiency. It must to do with institutional clarity. Your institutions must be predictable. It must be credible. It will be such that somebody can say, if I do this with you, this is the likely outcome. If China is offering us access to her huge market, we can take sand there. We can take anything there. We must assess the strength of the market. And what do we bring to the board? This has to do with how do we empower our farmers? China wants avocado.
Yes, that's what I would just, ask a question that's relating to what you're telling us. Because if you look at since China started the BR, China has been very clear on the objectives of its BR project.
Yeah.
China knows what its objectives are and what benefits its policies, especially the foreign policies, it's going to have on its own, economy and on its own companies operating in partnering countries. But I want to ask you, from all that we've said, do you think that Nigeria is clear on what we want out of this relationship? Because we are talking about now building capacity, building skills, and all that. Have we articulated in clear terms what we want out of this relationship?
We must overcome our current lethargy of institutional dysfunction. It is pervasive. We must admit institutional dysfunction. We must appreciate that institutions' dynamism, institutional efficiency, clarity, in the sense that it is straightforward. Our partners can understand where we go. It's not a matter of this man goes, when another man comes, everything starts all over. That is not institutional memory. We must establish a rule of institutional memory that gives us a continuous process of efficiency. If we don't do this, we cannot. It's not just China. We cannot even leverage our own strength, our own potentials. We can't even leverage the potential that exists within us, what we can do for ourselves. Nigerian market, China, every country first build your own market. You build integrated market and engage sectorial linkages. That is the strength. Your domestic market. That's what China is doing. If you go what they call double circulation, it's about reliance on China's domestic market against whatever shocks that might occur on the international market.
Like you mean sustainability
Absolutely.
is key.
Sustainability is built into China's national economy. So that even if there is a shock and disruption elsewhere, you have that resilience. We must build integrated national economy.
You know why I asked that question? Because if you look at our trade index, well, the latest I know is that we have moved to about, our, exports to China is in the area of maybe 1 point something or $2 billion as at 2024. While China, we are, doing a lot of, import from China in the range of billions of dollars, 11 billion, thereabout and all that. So there is that trade deficit, which remains as an imbalance in this relationship. And we are asking of tariff reduction in cashew, in shea butter, and all that. Is that enough?
The issue is not even the reduction or the question is, have we maximized, are we optimizing the productivity level? Yeah. So are we optimizing the productivity level? This is, so we have to, as a matter of fact, if we have to, we don't have to. In as much as China-Nigeria relation, China-African relation holds great prospect, let's not be romantic about it. It leaves a lot of work. It's a work in progress. And except we build the relevant capacity, except we clarify the institutional process and makes it clearer for our partners to understand our direction, we may not be able to leverage this whole thing. So the work starts here. The work is back on our table. We have to get things right so that we can fully maximize and optimize the outcome and potential of Nigeria and China cooperation.
Okay. Let's bring Uwe Chizao into our conversation, and I'm just looking at I did a lot. I studied philosophy, so I did a lot of Confucian and Mandarin and all that. And I know that this is part of the cultural and academic exchanges that China is bringing. In some of our universities, the Mandarin languages are being taught. But how accessible would you say is Chinese scholarship to Nigerian students from diverse regions?
I came from Tsinghua University today. I brought with my colleagues 17 MA and PhD students to come here. In terms of accessibility, actually, I don't want to be sound like right now promoting my program.
The students, are they Nigerian students?
No. And so let me just say, I don't want to sound like I'm selling a program or recruiting students from Nigeria to Tsinghua. Right now, actually, our school has 2 international programs designed specifically for students from the rest of the world to come in. So I'm here, if you asking this question, I'm answering, yes, it's not only accessible, the Chinese government provides scholarships. And so the language, you don't even need to learn Chinese Mandarin to be enrolled in our program. Tsinghua University, for example, of course this is only one example, has a program in digital journalism or financial journalism that's in English. So what else? So right now, actually, indeed, we are looking for students, especially students from the global south, to go to China to study. And I know that your country has a very young for youth population. So yes, the opportunities are there. Just 2 months, last month, on a similar trip to Chile in Latin America, I spotted a young scholar, and he's interested in Xi Jinping's thought. Guess what? Immediately when we come back, we offer him a 3-month visiting scholarship to China. And he had a tremendous experience. And then exactly 2 weeks ago, my institution, with the effort of myself, my students, Tsinghua University also approved another visiting scholarship for a Zimbabwe student, doctoral student. So I would say, yes, the opportunities are there, the gates are open, and we're particularly welcoming students from Nigeria,
I like your
from the rest of the
Yes, I like that you say,
yes.
I like that you say the gates are open.
Definitely.
And I also like that you say accessible, but I want you to break it into context. When you say your Tsinghua University is accessible to Nigeria, in terms of what? In which area? Tuition? I mean, how?
Right.
Can you break it down?
Okay, in terms of area, all across, from the hard science, engineering, agriculture, to even traditional Chinese medicine. And then in the humanities, see, like my own school, it's specialized in media and communication. So we have digital journalism, we have financial reporting, we are in the process of even creating a new doctoral program in development studies, which, as you can imagine, will be targeting at countries from the global south. So that's wide opening areas of study. And then in terms of finance, of course, there might be some barriers, but the Chinese government do offer scholarships which students can apply. And also, relatively, compared to study in the West, in the US, or even Europe, some of the countries, they charge from students tremendous 3 times tuition fee, that kind of thing. In China, the fees are still relatively low. And language-wise, we provide training, as I say, summer programs offer English as the instruction language. So actually last time when I talked to this student who came from Chile, he said, all we need to do is to overcome our West-centric ideas. You know, to get a higher degree, you got to go to the West. Now the table has turned. It's time for students in Nigeria, especially because you're a huge country and you have good basic education to explore opportunities in China.
Yes, indeed, Nigeria's educational system, is top-notch. When Nigerians go outside the country, they excel. They come tops most of the time because of the foundation laid here by educational system. And I've also seen on TikTok, on Facebook, Nigerians marrying Chinese and having children.
Yes.
And they come back. Yes, I've seen them marrying Chinese and having children, and the children speaking, the one I saw, the woman is married to an Igbo man, and the kids were speaking Mandarin and speaking Igbo at the same time, and she's also speaking Igbo. I think that is a way forward for our relationship. Intermarriage between Nigeria and China is growing every day.
Of course, that would be fantastic. the human beings already were mixing, right?
Yeah.
And also, just one more thing, speaking of education and the mixing or TikTok. I myself, when I was in Canada, I had a student who is Nigeria. He studied for a PhD with me, and I'm so proud of that. But today I'm back to China, Tsinghua University. So I'm looking for students coming there. And speaking about TikTok, do you know what's the most interesting story these days exploding in China? Is because, well, we earlier on talked about US, right? And the US talk about, you know, how open they are, but because by January 19th, they are planning to ban, or either you sell TikTok or we ban you, right? And guess what happens? US youth were flooding into China's internet. They called the refugees. They are China, there's a very popular domestic social media platform called the Little Red Book.
Exactly.
So US youth were coming to China. Early on, they were talking about China has the internet firewall. Well, the Chinese were saying, we never could imagine that the firewall is melting from the US side. Isn't that fascinating?
It's absolutely fascinating. I have to pause you there. Let's bring in Ambassador Usman Sarki into this conversation and talking about, you know, relationship between Chinese imports and Nigerian local businesses. We know it has a potential, a huge potential for growth, and also, you know, there are challenges. But amidst all this, you know, there are calls for policymakers to implement strategies, you know, that also borders, you know, local production, encourage fair competition and diversifying the economy. That is also to mitigate the effects while leveraging the benefits, just like Mr. Charles Onaneju, you know, said. So how can Nigeria begin to leverage on these possibilities, this huge potential in the Nigerian market and the Chinese export, and also we exporting? How can we begin to leverage on these benefits?
Well, thank you very much. I think, you know, this calls into question or into activation, policy and structural reforms on our part in order to maximize our relationship with China and to see the opportunities offered by the BRI, like the Belt and Road Initiative, the FOCAC initiative, and also the intergovernmental framework. That was actually, you know, the first plenary meeting of that intergovernmental framework between Nigeria and China held in July 2024, when Minister Tugar met with Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing. So within these three frameworks, I think, you know, the structures at home should be established in the form of a national committee on FOCAC, whereby government agencies and private sector will be brought together to streamline priorities for Nigeria in terms of engaging with China towards the development of the economy of the country. And here, we should give prominence to the Nigerian private sector, manufacturers, exporters, producers, farmers, livestock rearers, and others, in terms of, number one, accessing credit and finance to develop the productive forces of the country. And number two, in order to develop the capacity for us to export to China and to the rest of the world. Today, you cannot grow your economy without production and without export. We may have the internal capacity by numbers to absorb a lot of the production that we carry on in Nigeria and also to export to West Africa, but that is not enough. We need to expand to have a niche in the world market, particularly in the Chinese market. So I would suggest that there should be immediately established a governmental framework for the implementation of the China-Africa, Nigeria-China outcomes in terms of a ministerial committee that will consist also of the private sector. Now, the second proposal that I will submit is the role of leadership is very, very critical in terms of giving direction, focus, and purpose to any relationship with any country. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been to China, and right now, as we speak, I think he went to Abu Dhabi for a meeting on sustainable development. These are critical initiatives that are being taken by the president. But the president is not the implementer. He does not come to a Ministry of National Planning or Industry or Commerce to sit down on the desk of the minister to carry out the functions of the minister. It is the ministers who are supposed to really sit down, calibrate the decisions that have been reached at that high level, and start mainstreaming them into the programs of their individual ministries. And let us not forget the subnational level, that is the governors. Governors play a critical role in the cohesion of policies and programs in Nigeria. So governors should also be taken on board in terms of the formulation of strategies for implementing development programs and agreements that have been reached between Nigeria and foreign countries. Now, in terms of leadership, I think I want to contextualize the role of leadership by citing one example, just one example. Deng Xiaoping, the Chinese leader who opened up China in the 1980s to the world, visited Japan in October 1978. He was taken to various places in Japan, especially to Nippon Steel in Japan. What he saw actually amazed him and actually created a feeling that China was backward at that time. And he came back and told the Communist Party leadership that we cannot live by ideology. We have to develop our productive forces. We have to develop our economy. Following that, immediately in December 1978, an agreement was signed between China and Japan to establish a steel factory in Shanghai. 10,000 Japanese steel workers and experts were sent to Shanghai, 10,000 to establish the steel factory. 3,000 Chinese steel workers were sent to Japan to learn the art and science of steel production. In 5 years' time, by 1985, the Shanghai steel mill became the second largest steel producer in the world. And also, steel production in China rose from a mere 3 million tons to 30 billion tons a year. And the foundation of Chinese prosperity and strength today was on the steel industry. And here we are in Nigeria today, Ajaokuta Steel Company, various steel rolling mills in Katsina, Alaja, Jos, and others are actually out of production. So if we set up our priorities right, the sky is the limit in terms of developing the capacity and productive forces of the Nigerian economy by having this strategic engagement with China. Today, automobile production is at the center of dispute between EU, America, Canada, and other countries with China. China today is the largest automotive producer in the world, especially electric vehicles. And that means components for producing electric vehicles will be needed by China more and more, increasingly. And they are looking to Africa, Latin America, Central Asia, and other parts of the world to access critical minerals like lithium and also copper and others to be able to cope with this massive production of electric vehicles. China produces the largest electric panels in the world today. So why don't we strategically sit down, scope the trajectory of development of the Chinese economy in the next 5 years, and see where we can tap in terms of supplying not only raw materials, but also finished products from our own side to fit into the larger picture of Chinese production in the world. Indeed, we can even create space for Chinese manufacturing to take place in Nigeria. And here I think the Lee Group in Kano can serve as an example. They are employing thousands of people in Nigeria. They are manufacturing a lot of things on the ground, but that is not enough. We should go beyond that to look at the fourth industrial revolution. What is going on? How is it being carried out? And what role can Nigeria play? And here, I think it is very critical for us to engage the Nigerian private sector. The Nigerian private sector, virtually we should realize that government doesn't produce anything. It is the private sector, the farmer, the manufacturer, the small-scale industrialists, the big industrialists who produce and manufacture. So how do we support them? Let us open avenues for them to access Chinese funds. The 2 billion yuan facility that have been now established in the Central Bank of Nigeria, thanks to agreement, the policy framework developed by President Buhari before he left office, and now thanks to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who concurred in this arrangement. We have the 2 billion yuan facility established in the central bank by way of currency swap. That means Nigerian business people can access money readily in Nigeria to buy things from China or to pay for imports. And this is very critical. Let us sensitize the business community of this facility and others that are available so that they can benefit from that and grow the Nigerian economy as quickly as possible. It is.
Your Excellency, thank you. Thank you. You've raised a lot of issues that I don't think I need to ask any questions on those. I wanted to know how we can leverage, the skills, expertise that China has in diverse areas, manufacturing, technology, in agriculture, because we've seen what they're doing, building our rails, building our roads, but how much of the skills, do we have here at home? And also, speaking about, what is going on, what President-elect Trump might do in terms of, tariff ban on or imposition on China and how that might impact us. I'm just thinking about local manufacturing, because invariably that will make, China look towards more African countries and specifically Nigeria, and then the relationship will become closer and closer. Of course, we know what will happen. It will mean more Chinese products in our country, more Chinese goods in our country, but what happens to our own local products? So these concerns are out there, and I think that you've rightly addressed some of my concerns in your response. But when we come back from the break, I would also like Professor Sharif to speak on these areas of concern and how we can leverage the partnership for mutual benefit. Let's take a short break.
The business environment, to be honest with you, has been extremely hard on most Nigerian women's businesses, and of course harsh for a number of reasons. There is no way you would increase or move subsidy and increase the price of fuel that it doesn't have the counter effect. It has been very challenging for so many women. I know that a lot of them have cried in one way or the other to us to find ways of intervening. But that is not to say that it is all doom and gloom. We will still have a few percentage of women that are thriving in this economy, but we hope that we'll be able to get a larger percentage. One of the things I've seen with even our local purchases now is that people are buying more made in Nigerian options of food, of clothing, and so on and so forth than the imported. So that again is helping some of our industries thrive. Surprisingly, the telecommunications is still doing well, and the reason is very simple. A lot of people are going for online options of skills in terms of training, communications, even remote working. And so you will see that people that provide services around those areas also thrive. But I think at the end of the day, it's about partnerships, collaboration, and influencing power from especially the private sector and even the public sector. But we really need the public sector to drive a number of things, especially policies, because the public sector has the national spread above even whatever we can do in our own small way. What has happened over the years is that even the government, for example, is being pulled from different angles by all these stakeholders. We need to harness ourselves to have strategic focus areas, and we should all be moving in the same direction, not using a competitive approach, but a collaborative approach. Secondly, in collaboration, we need to move with large clusters of decision makers. Instead of, the process of reaching out to individuals is painstakingly long and it takes time. And so we need to engage these stakeholders on a larger platform. I think it's very important to identify where you can get help in your own little way. And one of the things I've realized is that when you operate in silo, it is difficult for you to lift yourself out of the situation. Identify ways you can do what you are doing in a simpler way. And if what you are doing is no more profitable, why not find out what can you do in the meantime that will help you? You need to think outside the box and then connect. What you can do is also identify people and become a cluster to provide a service that ordinarily you cannot do alone.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, welcome back. And quickly, Professor Sheriff, I put a question. How do we begin to address some of those concerns? The impact on our local manufacturer, you understand? And, of course, leveraging the expertise in building, in manufacturing, the skills that the Chinese have. We have not, we don't seem to have leveraged that. We don't seem to have tapped into that, despite the many constructions. The former Minister of Transportation tried to do that in the construction of the Abuja, Kaduna down to Maradi rail line. We saw a lot of, Nigerian youths, being shown the tracks by the Chinese counterpart. But how do we elevate that?
It's not to be like the Swedes people. It is usually said that the Swedes people have become so lazy because they are so rich. You don't need to work to be rich in Switzerland. You don't need to, do nothing. Everything is there because of the quantum of wealth, the Swiss people have. So what we need to do is, this issue of colonial melancholy that we've been spoiled by the West through what is known as foreign aid. So we're always the recipient of foreign aid, while the West had continued to give us this particular aid. And Africans have now become dependent on foreign aid to actually come to us. So that has actually exacerbated the issue of development crisis. And that has continued to make us indebted, especially World Bank, IMF. Why? Because we wanted everything to come to us. And these leaders who received this particular foreign aid, they squandered the money collected as loan. So this has created a vicious circle. So what we need to do, to my little surprise, is that why don't we sit as African leaders? For the first time, you have Vision 2010, Vision 2020, all had come and passed, but there is no tangible, outcome from these particular visions. The issue of African Union Agenda 2063, we are hoping the Africa we want. This is the vision, the Africa we want. But it's not just a matter of the ambience of the Africa we want without really working towards achieving the Africa we want. So why are African leaders seated, not coming up with policy inertia, a rigorous, revolutionary policy inertia, to actually change the existing status quo of Africa and Africans? Remember, it was President Xi Jinping who came up with this latest three initiative of Africa's agricultural modernization, Africa's industrialization, and talent cultivation. So that is why I say China is a messiah, because it's trying to take us...
Again, sorry, just before you continue, I like for you, I just want to point out that the word messiah for you is subjective and context dependent. So let's not use messiah to describe the role of China in this bilateral relationship. Yes, China is very strategic to Nigeria, but China cannot be a messiah because Nigeria also has markets. China
okay, would we say China is a pathfinder instead?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
It's a pathfinder instead.
And if you may, Clara,
Claire.
we have what we call development cooperation. And in development cooperation, partners assist each other.
Precisely.
To actually bridge up the gap in order to achieve the goals of development. So, if you fail to achieve it independently, somebody comes to help you achieve your goal, is salvaging you from the fiasco you are facing and failure to achieve the goal of development, which is your main objective. So that is why the application of the concept of messiah. But let me not go back to that particular end. Those indispensable areas of development, from the mercantilist argument, is that you must be able to produce. And if you are able to produce, you must be able to export. Not even being able to export, you must be able to export more than you import.
Precisely.
So if you don't export more than you import, meaning there is trade imbalance and there is economic problem in terms of your trade
That's
and
why
production.
I'm asking, what do we do to, what do we do? We don't have, what do we do to protect our local, manufacturers? Because we know that the trade relation between Nigeria and China will increase and strengthen from 1.61 billion now, to what we are importing from China.
Yeah, it's not protecting the local manufacturers first, because what we are doing is not enough, because we don't produce the food that suffices Nigeria's population.
Okay.
So it's to aggressively and massively embark on a rigorous industrialization process, which we cannot do it alone. China did not industrialize alone. It had to copy from US, from Canada, from Japan, from what Sarki said. So therefore, China are partners. That is why the concept of jointly advancing modernization.
Exactly.
What you cannot achieve alone, definitely you must have partners with whom you can actually achieve that. Apart from that, talent cultivation. Nigerians and Africans are highly talented. There is the need to support and promote this particular talent, because it is this particular talent that envisages innovation as well as creativity. It's through this particular creativity as well as partnership and collaboration we'll be able to create these particular basic machines, industrial machines. You cannot industrialize without these particular machines.
And also human machines too. We have a young generation who are hungry to learn.
Yeah.
Hungry to adapt to changes. They do it so fast that you wonder where they get it. Our generation were a little bit slow, but these ones are going very, very fast, and they want to acclimatize, they want to adapt to changes and things happening around the world. You meet a young Nigerian telling you that I intend to do this in the next 10 years. He has ambition to do that.
Then we need to promote that and develop that.
Yes.
Sorry, one major area is that this is the talent that we need to cultivate. Not through this particular misleading social investment programs, giving people 10,000, 20,000 naira.
That's giving the fish and not teaching how to fish.
Yes, that will not salvage our economy and national independence. We need to develop a policy inertia, a policy framework that deliberately intend to develop this particular young talent who will in turn industrialize, create industries, create machines, so that we can be able to produce and sell and compete, you know, within the international market by not relying on the goods that come from other places. But remember, we must actually interdepend. There are things that we cannot produce, we must get from China. Yes. There are things that are not available in China, which if we have the capacity to produce or provide, China is ever ready to accept it. So this is the only way.
Yeah, you also talked about policymakers, and you know there have been calls for them to implement strategies and you know that borders along local production. What role can policymakers in Nigeria, play as we begin to leverage on the Nigeria-China relations? And you also talked about sustainability when you were talking area. Sustainability is key. Ambassador Sarki mentioned the Ajaokuta steel mill. He mentioned the story of how China was able to, build their steel industry. Why can't we do it here?
Well, let me start by saying there is no type of partnership that could be a substitute to national initiative. No type of partnership, whether with China or whether with heaven, can be a substitute to strategic national initiative focused, I emphasize, on building capacity. Partnerships can help, facilitate, drive, co-push, but not a substitute. In fact, that is the lesson of China. Exactly. Looking yourself in the mirror, discovering whom you are by interrogating your specific condition, understanding your reality the way it is. Cabral, African foremost thinker and revolutionary, do not exaggerate your prospects. First, learn of your weakness. Start by understanding your weakness. Our weakness today is lack of capacity and institutional dysfunction. Anybody in denial of this, have not started to address the structural crisis that is the Nigerian challenge.
Mr. Nanuju, let's put you on hold. Take Ambassador and then come and end up right here in the studio because we have limited time. We'll come back to you. We'll end with you here. Let's just take the last question from Ambassador. And Ambassador, I like you to talk briefly on the issue of debt trap diplomacy, which I'm sure you must have heard about it. Nigerians talk about it, almost all the time, and there are examples to point at. Right now, I hear China is third on the list of our debt list, third highest, and all that. So how do we get out of this? Should that arise, a situation where we are unable to, repay our loans to China?
Yes, thank you very much, Claire. Let me just, before I answer your question, make a clarification. The 30 billion tons that I said steel production is not per year. It is the cumulative production since 2017, in China. So I think, in 2017, China produced 1.8 billion tons of steel, rather instead of the 3 million they produced in 1985. So just by way of clarification, I don't want to be quoted as saying China produced 30 billion tons a year. No, 1.8 billion by 2017. That said, I think, the issue of debt is a sovereign decision of a country. To go and discuss with partners to borrow in order to inject capital or funds into the economy to develop specific projects. Our loans from China are state loans guaranteed by the Chinese government, the Chinese Development Bank, and our own central bank and the government. And they are loans taken for specific purposes. For instance, the building of the ports in Lagos, railways, the Abuja, rail line, the Mambila Plateau, the Mambila hydroelectric power, the hydroelectric power in Niger, Shiroro, and others. These are tied to specific projects and programs. They are not loans taken just in order to furnish offices or build houses and other things. They are loans tied to concrete projects. And the nature of these loans are actually, in most cases, very, very low interest rate loans. The problem arises from the timing of the use, accessing and the use of the loans and the completion of projects. As the other panelists have indicated, policy framework and structural cohesion in our country dictate the extent to which we use these facilities. So the issue of debt trap is a perception created by critics of the relationship between China and Africa in terms of the benefits that we are getting. Let us remember that the greatest debtor country in the world today is the United States of America, owing trillions, to private entities and also to other countries like Saudi Arabia and China. So the issue of debt is a question of management and decision to maximize the use of the resources you have obtained. So it's a sovereign decision, and because of that, it is not something that is going to lead to recolonization of our country or imposition of some dictates by China on us. So let us not be so particularly concerned about this matter, because
actually we've run out of time, and as usual on Good Morning Nigeria, it's when the discussion is getting very, very interesting, time begins to run out. But we'll have to come back here to the studio so that we'll begin to round up. And Professor Zhao is seated here. Let's talk about the role Nigeria can play in shaping the future of Africa-China relations, especially in education, in trade, in arts, like you mentioned. And how can we contribute to equitable and sustainable partnership between Africa and China, including Nigeria?
Yeah, very good question. And let me make an observation, if I will. I feel in the discussion between the ambassador and the two scholars and your questions, there is an unspoken elephant in the room.
In the room, yes.
That elephant is the Western media, especially U.S. media's discussion of China-Africa relationship. That is, the debt trap, the imbalance. I think if there's one thing, most important, speaking from the perspective of communication scholar, is to break out that unspoken, almost like in the air influence of Western media. One part is the victim mentality that comes from colonization. That I think the Nigerian people were struggling already over 100 years to overcome that mentality of dependence, of waiting for others to give the aid, like what you're seeing. Not wait for the fish, but try to learn the fishing.
Yes.
And that's what the Chinese is doing. So one part is overcome the colonial mentality. The other is overcome the current, yes, U.S.-China tension, that kind of thing. But I really appreciate what this professor or all the three experts, no wonder you are the top experts in Nigeria about China-Nigeria relations. We're seeing that is your self-determination, your initiative, if I will, your overall purpose of the nation is the most important. And only when you have that's your unity of your purpose, your self-determination, independence, which is actually, if there's one lesson, that's China's lesson, right? China started at that point when its GDP was even lower than many African countries. And why China has been able to do that? We are not afraid in the beginning
Professor
imbalance.
we have to stop, but I must not let you go before asking. What are the opportunities for the female gender in your school?
Yes. Let me finish one more sentence. I think China and Nigeria has a lot to do in the global south as two giants to take this leadership, to take this opportunity to collaborate, to develop together through the Belt Road Initiative, all that. And what female can do, China went through, I think, tremendous social revolution for females. as part of the Chinese Revolution. So now, you know, Chinese female women were leading in many areas. Ooh. And myself is an example. I was born a country girl, right? And I was able to get the best education. The government sent me to study in Canada. But now I return to work with the younger generation. And I'm bringing 17 of them to learn from your country.
You are a very good ambassador. You are a very good ambassador. You are a very good ambassador for China.
Thank you. And we together we build capacity.
You're almost buying me over.
Yeah.
You're almost converting me.
Okay. Yeah. And forget about those U.S. discourse about that trap, all that. Your experts have already said there are different views on that.
Okay. We really have to stop you there.
Okay.
Zhao Yunzi, Humanities Chair Professor at Tsinghua University and Chairperson Harare Forum for Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure.
You know, and love for Nigeria. We truly appreciate you.
Yeah.
Mr. Charles Onaneju, Director, Center for China Studies, member of the International Advisory Committee of the Beijing-based China-Africa Institute, and member of the editorial board of China Theoretical Journal, CSL Science, published by the Chinese Academy of Social Science, and author of 4 books on China, Nigeria, and China-Africa relations. Thank you so much for your time. I would also like to thank Professor Sharif Gali Ibrahim, Head of Department Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja. I would also love to thank Ambassador Selki that joined us. Yes, joined us from Switzerland. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning. As always, it's a delight listening to you talk about, you know, relations, Nigerian relations across the world, and the history you gave us. I got to learn a lot of new things today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you so much for your time. Another interesting edition will be on tomorrow. Stay tuned with NTA. I'm Juma Yusuf.
I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.